Hello, I am Mudita, and welcome back to Satisfactory. This is my 1.0 playthrough, where I attempt to load balance all my factories. For some reason, this is what I call fun. In the last normal episode, I added more plastic and rubber production. And with that, I should have all the parts I need to make these new Phase 4 parts. By the end of the video, I'll have cooling devices, radio control units, fuse modular frames, supercomputers, and turbo motors headed to storage and my dimensional depots. This is going to be a long one with plenty of load balancing, so buckle up. Ficsmas is now completed, although the event is still turned on, so if you randomly see snow, that's why. And while that last factory was ramping up to 100%, I had a little bit of free time. It didn't take me the full 4 hours to get everything decorated, so I got things jump started for this video. Let me show you what I did. So over here at our train station, we've gotten a couple things running. I think it's easiest if we just take a look here. So right here at the end, I went ahead and got the aluminum running over here, and now it's just sinking on this side. So if we take a look, there really shouldn't be, not too much of a buffer really in any of these. Not right now anyways. We'll probably let a little bit build up, but not much. I just need to make sure that the throughput is good on all of these. So if we come all the way up to this floor, 599, 299, 599. Yep, we're pretty much there. So the two outside ones should have 600 and that one should have 300. So we're looking good. So let's head back on inside and I'll show you where we're going to start. Alright, so here we are on what is currently the top floor. And I've used up most of the space. So I think, these are all the sinks. We've got this spot right here, and I think that's actually the last bit up here. Cool. And originally I thought this is a pretty big space. I'm sure we could squeeze everything in here. Yeah, definitely not. So let's take a look at that flowchart. And here it is. Yeah, I know, it's kind of a mess. And that's just because we're making so many different things. None of them are in huge quantities, but since you really can't see this, let me go over the relevant stuff real quick. These are all of the parts that I already have, or in the case of iron ingots, I'm going to need to make a few more. I just need to do a little bit of load balancing to get just the right amount sent over to the factory. And here are all of the alternate recipes that I'm going to be using. So since that room really isn't nearly as big as I think it is, I'm going to do these two sections in this room, and then I'm going to add a third floor to the factory. And then I have as much room as I need. With 1,000 iron ingots, I'm going to be able to use the iron wire, iron pipe, and steel rotor alt recipes to make 18 motors a minute using only iron. And then using the copper ingots and the aluminum ingots, I'm going to use enough aluminum sheets, 60 per minute, and that's not used for anything else, that's just going straight to storage. I'm going to be making 450 aluminum casings. A little bit will go to storage. Most of that is going to be used for the rest of the factory. Alright, so since I'm pretty sure I've got plenty of space, let's go ahead and find the center. So 13, so that would be 7th foundation here. Gonna go ahead and grab my 4 assembler blueprint. In total, I need 6. 4 of them are for the casings, 2 of them are for the sheets. So I want 3 on one half, the other 3 on the other half. So that looks about even. That's more space than I need. 1.5 foundations should be plenty. Alright, so we'll do the 4, and then I just need my 2. And I'll just line these up right next to them. Terrific. And both of these are at 100%. These ones, let's pull out the MAM. Alright, so if we look at some of the more recent ones, it's got to be in here. There we are. The alclad casing. Oh, I do really need this one too. But for now, we're just going to take this one. Alright, and now I can set the rest of my recipes. Alright, so that's the aluminum. We'll just have to do a little bit of load balancing in a minute. Now let me lay down the machines for all of the motors. And the difference between my 8 constructors, A and B, are where the input is facing. So since I'm going to have all of the inputs coming in on this side and then the outputs leaving on this side, I actually want the other one. Alright, and then I'm going to do the same thing where I need 2 of these, so we're just going to put either one on one half of the room. We're going to have all of them facing this way as far as the inputs, so I'm just going to use the same one. Face it the right way. Perfect. And then I need 2 more. One foundation should give me plenty of space, so let's go and put that one there. Then the last one can go next to it. So 3 of these are going to be making iron wire, and 1 of them will be doing steel pipes. And let me go ahead and figure that out. So actually, I'm going to make this one the steel pipes, or iron pipes. In total, I need 180 across 8 machines, 22.5. And all of the other constructors will be using the iron wire alt recipe. And these are underclocked as well. So I need 504 across 24 machines. 21 even. Nice. Alright, and with the handy 8 assembler blueprint, man, being able to place 8 of these at once is just so nice. Alright, so let's find the middle, which should be right down the middle of this foundation. Perfect. So here I'm going to give myself 3 foundations because I've got plenty of space and I might need to do some load balancing with the wire and the pipes. So I need 2 sets of these. Alright, let's set some recipes. So the first half of these are going to be using steel rotors, and let's go ahead and underclock these. I need 36 across the 8 machines, so 4.5. The other half will be using just the normal stator recipe, and these are going to be clocked to the exact same thing. Alright, and that'll make all the stators and rotors, so last part, I just need 4 assemblers to bring it all together. Got our default recipe. I think these are going to be clocked to the same thing. So 18 divided by 4. Yep, 4.5. Alright, so there's all the machines. Definitely wasn't going to fit everything in here, that's for sure. Before I get too far, I'd like to make sure I have all of the pieces ready. So aluminum, I definitely already have. We've got that sent over. That's just syncing over at the train station right now. But I do need 1,000 iron ingots, so let me go take a look. Ah, yes. The fun madness of this corridor here. So this is where we're getting rid of a lot of the extras. So we've got 108, 180, and I think only just a handful on this side. A whole 16. Okay, so yeah, not a whole lot of iron ingots, and I don't think any iron is sinking down here. No, we've got Caterium and... Actually... Oh, there's another 250. Okay. But even all of that combined isn't even half of it. So let me throw something together real quick. I'll be right back. Alright, we're back in my iron room 2. So this actually has been running for a while. My original, I don't remember, 4,800 iron ingots wasn't enough. And so I added these, and now I've doubled it and added all these. So let me show you. Real simple. We're just using the pure iron ingot. The nice thing is you almost double it. 7 iron ore, 13 iron ingots, just need a little bit of water. So if you take 560 iron ore, you can turn that into 1040 iron ingots. So there's the 1000 I need right here. This is all load balanced to this line right here. So we've got just our 1.5 belt going into the lift, coming over here. And I am just using, I think, 2 nodes. Let me check. Yep, 2 nodes. So there were 2 impure nodes that I just wasn't using down here. So I just have them each clocked to 280. And they are going to head on up. So they're nice and close. And now that I have the Mark III miners, I can get a decent amount out of them. And I'm just using another one of my mini water extractors that I already put down there. And just added another pipe and sent that over here. Just like the rest of them. Nice and easy. Done it a few times before. So this will all get merged into 2 different sections. 7 and 13 are both just like awful numbers to work with, but thankfully if you get just the right number, it works out pretty decent. So I'm making 1040. My highest speed belt is only 780, but 780 is actually divisible by 65, so I just group up 12 of these machines and I've got a full 780 belt that's headed to a sink. And then the remaining is just going into the second sink. So for right now, I'm just going to get this started. And that way I can have this up and running. But then I know for sure I have all of the iron I need for today's projects. So I think all the water is already on. We've got power to all of these. Now all I need to do is flip the switch on these. Alright, so let's go ahead and flip the switch on the farthest one. And the closest one. And there they go. Alright, so now there's an extra 1040 iron ingots being sunk. Perfect. And I went ahead and fast forwarded quite a bit. So the main focus is going to be the next floor up. And including the belt work for everything would probably make it really long and it might be a little bit too much. But I do want to go through it real quickly before we turn this section on. Since I've already made motors, none of this is really too new, just scaled up a little bit more than before. Before the aluminum section, this is kind of new. So we've got all of our assemblers here. And this fun little guy right here got me the exact amount of copper that I needed for the 2. So since the small line comes over here, for these 2, I need a whopping 20 ingots in total. This section needs 300 since each one needs 75. And 20 over 320, I believe, is the same as 1 over 16. So that's what this is doing. So I basically just split it in half. So here's a half, here's a quarter, here's an eighth, and here's our 1/16. And then everything else just gets re-merged together and heads back into here. So nice and simple. As far as the aluminum goes, this one I went with the easy option. So I don't even need a smart splitter. So in some cases like this where all I need is 60, this right here is only going to have 660, so it's close to being full, but not completely. So to help with that, I have a stretch of Mark II belt, but then it'll get limited down to the Mark I. So this can more quickly grab it, so if there is a gap, this stretch of faster belt can make up for it. Whereas if the whole thing was Mark I, if there was a gap and it missed it, then all of a sudden this isn't 60 per minute anymore, and you're getting slightly more over there. Eventually it'll work out because that section will back up. It'll take many hours to do most likely, but this kind of avoids it. And that'll give me my 60 aluminum ingots for the sheets, and then the rest will go to the casings. Alright, so moving on to everything else. And here I have my 2 belts. So this is the full 780 belt, and then this one I already load balanced down to only 220, so I have exactly the amount that I need. But the way I need to split the iron ingots is I need 720 to go to iron pipes and only 280 to go to the iron wire. Which does seem a little backwards because the iron wire is the one that has 3 times the amount of machines, but it needs way less of the amount of iron ingots. But this was real easy to do. Since this is a full 780 line, I can just throw a normal splitter down, use one Mark 1 belt, and this will be always full. So I join this up with the 220 line, and now I have my 280 that then I split between the 3 different groups of 8 constructors. And then the 720 line heads over to that blueprint to make all of the iron pipes. And then the finished products, I've got wire coming over here, joining up into this merger. Same thing with that one. So I've got all 3 joining up here. So this is my 504 wire. And then that just goes into my 3/7 and 4/7 blueprint that I already had made. So if you're using the combo of these recipes with the steel rotors and the stators, this is basically the split for the wire. 4/7 is going to head on over to your stators, and the 3/7 is going to head on over to the steel rotors. And then of course it's another prime number split. It's 2/5 and 3/5 for the steel pipes. So the 2/5 is headed on over to the rotors, and the 3/5 heads on over to the stators. And then from there, super simple. It's just rotors into one, stators into the other. Good old load balancing, and out we go with 18 motors a minute. And for now, let me show you where these are going. So the bottom 2 are the ones that I'm sending to storage. The top 2 are the ones that are going to go upstairs to the next part of the factory. So with the casings, I just needed to split off 20. So using the same thing, I've got a nice long section of faster belt, but it'll get limited down to Mark 1. So right here is going to be 60 minute. And if I use all 3 outputs of the splitter, that'll be 20 minute headed on to storage. That's 60 sheets headed to storage. And then this one will be everything else, which is 430. It's going upstairs. So those are just headed out into the hallway. And let me show you. And it's just going to go all the way up to the top for right now. So I've got my casings and my motors. We're just going to sync them here. But eventually, this is the hallway. And we'll send that off into the new part of the factory. And then the rest of it will go into storage. All right, well, let's go ahead and turn this on. I thought about building the whole new part of the factory and getting everything started at once. But when I was thinking about it, it just makes way more sense to get this section of it turned on, and then we'll worry about the second section. So that's what I'm going to do. And that means that I'll finally have a steady supply of aluminum sheets, so I don't have to worry about making too many Mark V belts and running out. Because right now all I have is one random storage container in the swamp with my leftovers from the temporary factory that I deleted. So this will be good. So to get this started, we're going to start with aluminum, so I'll meet you over by the train. Here we are underneath the train. And I guess I never really showed it off, but the load balancing for these is just super easy. Since I've got 600, 300, 600, to do that, we've got the Mark V that goes into a splitter, and then it's just a Mark II and a Mark 1. Since that would be 120, that would be 180. Taking 180 out of the 780, that leaves me my 600, and I'm basically doing the exact same thing, just the 120, 180 out of the 480 to give me 300 on this line. And I did go ahead and get the trains running for the plastic and rubber since I am going to need those. Both of these are 360, so it's really easy, just the Mark II belt. Don't even need the merger in the back. We can just send the one belt back in, and nice and easy load balancing. Gotta love it. Alright, so to get this part of the factory going, I'm going to send the aluminum on in, and I'll show you the load balancing as it goes into the factory. Alright, just need a couple stubby lifts here. Alright, so that one goes there. This one's in the middle. And this one is this spot. Yep. Alright, so let's go ahead and change these. So this one's Mark IV since that's 300. These are 600. That one's Mark IV. These two are Mark V. And there they go. Nice and load balanced. Alright, so let me show you what I did on the inside. Alright, so that aluminum is just headed on over here. And then 2 of them dropping down. Basically just missing all of this stuff. And then popping back up. So we've got one of the Mark V belts, which is the 600 line. And then the 300 line is going into a 1/5, 4/5 load balancer so that I can take off 60. So that's what this is right here. So we've got a 60 line that'll branch off, and that'll give me the 660 I need. And then as far as the copper goes, I actually did the same thing. Forgot to show it off, but I just added a whole bunch of refineries, and we're just doing some pure copper. I'm pretty sure I'm just going to fill up this whole second spot with more copper because, you know, for some reason I may need a few extra copper ingots here in the near future. But for now, we can get rid of that, and we'll just go ahead and leave that there. And that will send the copper on over. I'll show that load balancing in a second. And there goes the iron. And I just added more chaos to all the load balancing over here. It's all just kind of manually done. I didn't use blueprints for these, so it's just becoming a chaos. But I try to label things as best as I could where things needed to be labeled. So I had 220 coming out of there, which is the exact amount that I needed to get paired up with that 780 line. So the 780 line, I just got to, I think I routed that on the roof, send that right over. Making 1040, one full belt of 780, left 260 on this line. So to get the 260, it was pretty easy. You just take out 60 of it. And then if I split that 3 ways, we've got 20, 20, and then 20. So I just need to recombine 20. And there's my 220. Alright, so these are more than full of casing because I probably talked for way too long. I'm just going to clear out the extras. Since this is all pretty much sinking anyways, can disrupt production just a little bit. And then that way it'll get it flowing the way it should be. And as we can see, things are starting to ramp up for all of the iron is here now. And that is 18 motors a minute. Not too shabby. Take a look. Things looking like we're staying green. Obviously, this is going to be able to run for... Oh, of course I said that, and that one goes yellow. Well, thankfully, this is going to be able to run for quite a while before I actually need these. But for now, they're just going to head along here, meet up with the casings, and head up onto the roof and get sunk. And the aluminum's looking good. But same thing, I'm going to be able to check on this every once in a while since I've got a bit more to build. And most of this is just building up storage for right now, so that is a-okay. But now that I have the sheets and the casings automated and headed to storage in my dimensional depots, I can clean up that little bit of mess that I left out in the swamp. And there's 1 or 2 things I might want to add while I'm out there. Snowing in the swamp. Only during Ficsmas. Well, now that we have both the casings and the aluminum sheets automated, we still have plenty of space. First things first, let's go ahead and get our Mercer spheres back. That's nice and handy. And I don't want to just throw those away, since, you know, they're kind of basic items. That's still a decent amount of points. Let's go ahead and set up some sinks. Alright, that'll be a nice little chunk of tickets. So while that's working away, I've got one more thing I want to do. So let me head out towards those bauxite nodes. And here we are. kind of in the middle of the swamp. So here is a limestone node. And it's a normal one. So I recently made one that goes over making more concrete for here in the late game. And that's what I'm going to use right here. Let's go ahead and get rid of that tree. So if I grab myself a Mark III miner, throw that down, fully overclock it, 600 limestone. Looking at the map, I've got this normal node here. There's also another normal node, so I'm going to do the same thing over there. There's also a pure node there and a pure node here. I don't have the Mark VI belts, so I don't want to use those quite yet until I can really fully utilize them. And who knows what I'll use those for. But in total, throughout the world, there are 50 of just normal limestone nodes. And then you've got quite a few pure and impure, so I'm not too worried about using one or two of them just to boost my concrete production for the dimensional depots. I think that would be pretty handy. So that's what this blueprint is going to do. Alright, and let's see. Let's go ahead and just grab... yeah, double and... sure. Right there, looks good. Delete that now. If I thought I would run out of limestone nodes, I would probably have made one that using the wet concrete. But since I really don't see myself running out of nodes, I figured I might as well just make things easier on myself. It saves on space, it saves on power, and it's just nice and simple. So we'll just take one Mark V, that'll take the 600 into there. That'll get load balanced across 6 overclocked constructors. So each one of these is going to take in 100 limestone and spit out 33 1/3 concrete. Those will then get grouped all together, go into a smart splitter. So the primary will be the industrial storage container, which then feeds 2 dimensional depots. But then once that gets completely full, just to keep things running, they'll go on up over here and head into an awesome sink. Some people would much rather let everything back up. I like to have everything keep running, and it just gives me a kind of better picture of how much power I'm truly using. So this just lets me keep the power a little bit more consistent instead of it fluctuating every time I end up using more concrete. It doesn't use a lot, but if you add a bunch of these, it adds up. So now all we need to do is connect this and watch it come to life. And there we go. Gotta love load balancing with super short, simple systems. 100% in no time. So that's an extra 200 concrete. For right now, that's what I've got going. So until we build up a little bit of a buffer inside that industrial storage container, I've just got the extra 200, but it won't take too long to fill up both of the dimensional depots since they both only have like 1 stack internally. And then in a matter of no time, I'll have an extra 480 essentially, boosting my dimensional depot upload speed so I can use a lot more concrete. So I'm going to do the same thing to the other normal node that's over there. I just need to run power over to it. That's the nice thing. That's all you need to do is connect power. Gotta love it. And the reason I wanted to do this is the next step, I'm going to use some concrete. And for that next step, you're going to have to temporarily delete this guy. Sorry, space elevator. Does that disappear? Is that... we've built it and now it's up there? Oh, cool. Well, that's neat. Well, since I'm out of room, the next step is going to be to add on another floor. And I think this is going to be the last floor. Now, I changed the wall, so I'm not going to use the exact same ones, but they're only ever so slightly different. Ta-da! So the main difference is it's green, and the windows are 2 foundations taller. Everything else I basically kept the same. I went back and forth with keeping the color exactly the same for the whole factory, and who knows, maybe the one stripe of green is going to bother me. But I like green, and I kind of wanted it to signify that it is a different floor because this one is 2 foundations taller. And the reason I needed to go taller is particle accelerators won't fit inside those rooms. They're just a little too tall and they'll clip through the floor and maybe even the room above it. They're real tall. So this is the max height for the Mark II blueprinter. But this will let me keep all of the other walkways and everything else kind of the same, so I can reuse a lot of the pieces because I don't want it to be that different of a floor. But I do want it to be just a bit taller. So I'm going to use a whole bunch of concrete, placing down a whole bunch of new walls. And then I need to kind of clean up these floors because I don't want this bright white stripe just randomly. Most likely these rooms won't be the exact same size, and I really should have done the internal walls and whatnot a little bit different. But hey, hindsight's 2020. So I'm just going to clean that up. And then I'm also going to use a whole bunch more concrete, placing a bunch more of these. So I am going to use the exact same hallway, and I went back and forth whether I wanted to make a new one for this because it is just going to end up being 2 foundations shorter than the outside wall. And the reason I'm not extending it any taller is I could make this, walkway, give myself more windows to look at the factories. But I thought an extra 2 foundations would be a decent amount of space in case I wanted to run any belts on top of here for them to go onto the roof. Like if I was going to power some drones. So I'm just going to use the same ones. That extra space might come in handy. So let me get to work and I'll show you what I've got. And then we can finally start building what's the focus of this whole video. About time. And now we have a 3rd floor. And I have to fill up this gap somehow. It looks a little funny. I'll figure that out eventually. So I just extended everything up. Basically just made new blueprints for most of the things except for the hallways like I mentioned, since I think this space may end up being useful. We'll see. It may end up just being a completely empty gap. And that's fine. So now I've got tons of extra space and some extra height to work with. Those darn particle accelerators are tall. So I figure I'll just kind of work in this area and work my way out. This area is going to be a little bit small, although I could just take up lots of space going this way. I figured this would just give me the most amount of space in the future. I have made 2 new blueprints for this project. So the first one being a double blender blueprint. So on this side, we've got all of the inputs. So I can do both liquids or gas. And then we have the 2 solid inputs. So nice and easy, real simple load balanced. I didn't bother doing the outputs just because I figured it's probably easier just to do it case by case. And then I used that blueprint to make a 4 blueprint version. So basically the same thing, I just need an extra set of splitters right here in the front, and then I just need to plug in the inputs right here, and then we've got 4 blenders, nice and load balanced. Alright, so let's go put these to use. I am going to go ahead and start in this corner. That just makes the most amount of sense to me. Alright, spin it the right way. I'm going to leave myself 1 foundation for basically like the output. And I'm just going to use a sushi belt for all of the outputs because everything is in such low amount. 1 belt is still more than enough. And I really only need 1 foundation here because I think I'll have an easy time getting everything in there. So we'll start with this one. And these right here are going to do my cooling systems. However, I don't really like this default recipe. And since I should have all of the alternates in my hard drive library, let's see what we got. There we go. Cooling device. That way I don't need to pipe up water. We just need the gas, the motors, which I've already made, and then I just need to make some heat sinks. And I'm going to be making 20 in total, so all of these are going to be clocked to 100%. In total, I'm going to have 40 heat sinks and 10 motors, so I'm completely fine with everything being Mark 1. I don't need to change any of the belts. So to make the heat sinks, because I don't have those made, I just need my 4 assembler blueprint. And I'll just give myself one foundation here as a gap. It's nice and lined up right on the center. All right. And for the heat sinks, same thing. I don't really want to use this default recipe. Let's take a look at the hard drive library. I'd rather use this heat exchanger. So I'll use casings and rubber instead. And I need 40 in total, so all of these are at 100%. Now with these, the amounts are even, 30 and 30, so 2 of them would be 60. So everything here is fine being Mark 1. I just need to plug in a 120 line of both the casings and the rubber. Let's get some more machines placed first. Alright, so that takes care of the cooling devices part of this room. So now let's work on the electronics. I'm going to need 2 sets of 3 here. I'm going to line up everything with this one foundation gap that I'm giving myself. And that'll give me plenty of space in a couple spots to do the load balancing that I am going to need to do here. Alright, so with these down, let's set some recipes. These outside ones here are going to be doing the copper sheets. And I need exactly 30, so all of these get to be clocked at 100%. And then the second set of 3 are going to be doing quick wire, but these I need to underclock to 50, because I only need 150 total. For the next step, I need 2 sets of these 2 assemblers. And the great thing about this is they're just a tiny bit smaller than these 3 constructors, so I can get them lined up perfectly. Because the quick wire will go to these, and the copper sheets will go to these. Let's set these recipes. This is going to make my circuit boards, and I'm just going to use the default recipe. And I need exactly 15, so both of these at 100%. These 2, I'm going to use the plastic AI limiter alt recipe. But in total, I only need 10, so both of these can be underclocked to 5. And that's circuit boards and AI limiters. For the next step, I need 6 manufacturers, so this blueprint comes in 2 pieces, because I can't quite fit 6 in one. So let's go ahead and place that piece, and then the corresponding piece that has 4. Before I mess with the build, so let's go ahead and set this recipe. Okay, so this is the one we're going to use, the insulated crystal oscillators. But that's not quite the right amount. I need 10 in total across the, nope, not 4, 6 machines. So 1 2/3. Alright, and this only needs 3 inputs. So on this bottom floor, I'm going to go ahead and just delete this one, which deletes the bottom one up here. And looking at the amounts in total, I'm dealing with 100 quartz, 70 rubber, and only 10 AI limiters. So that means, 2 of them will have Mark II belts plugged in, but as soon as they get split in half, it's Mark I for everything. So let's go ahead and just combine the blueprints before I forget. And then the outputs. And there we go. There's 6 manufacturers load balanced. And for the next step, I'm giving myself 2 foundations to work with, just in case. And I need 4 manufacturers. Don't worry, I'm going to fix this. It's the pillars from underneath are clipping through it, which is super annoying right now, so let's not look at that. Alright, so these 4 are going to be doing my radio control units. And I need 10, so they're actually all clocked to 100%. Again, I only need 3 inputs, so I can just get rid of the top one. And if we look at those inputs, the aluminum casings we're bringing in crystal oscillators we just built on the step before. So computers. For the computers, I just need 3 assemblers. And let's just go ahead and line up the splitters. Why not? Go. And for that, I'm going to use the crystal computer recipe. So I've already got the crystal oscillators and the circuit boards. And I need 10 exactly, so actually 3 at 100%. Alright, and so for the last sets of machines, I need 2 manufacturers for this step. And I'm just going to give myself 2 full foundations to work with. Should be plenty. And then I also need 2 blenders. Right there, looks good. Let's go ahead and set these recipes. The manufacturers are going to be making my turbo motors. And I'm going to make a whopping 2 a minute. So each one of these underclock to 1. And then these blenders are going to be making my fused modular frames. And this one we're also just using the default. And I'm going to be making 3 in total. So each one of these is also at 100%. So there's one last machine I need to place. And right here it looks like I've got a nice amount of empty space to work with. So I just need one simple assembler. One last new alternate recipe I need to unlock. This bad boy. This one's just really nice and simple. Just radio control units and the cooling systems. Alright, so we got our supercomputer. And I'm not going to be making 3. We're just going to be making 2 a minute. They're all really low amounts, but it's just to feed my storage. And once you give it a little bit to build up, I'll have more than I could ever use. Alright, so for a bunch of this, the belt work is super simple. So like for this, the quick wire, I've got 150 quick wire. All of that is going to this next process. So each one of these needs 75. And same thing with this. I think we're making, what, 30 copper sheets? Yep. And that's just going straight into this process. And with the heat sinks, I need to do the same thing, except for with this one. Let's see. Is this going to go on the top one? No, the motors would be the top one. So for this height, I just need a short lift. So if I connect it to the stackable and then make sure that it's facing the right direction, there we go. And then I can just snake it around here and into there. So let me just go through some of the more interesting belt work, and then I'll just kind of fill in all of those gaps because that's pretty easy. But we'll take a tour before we start it up. I'm going to use basically these spots right here to bring everything in. And I need quite a few things, so I think it's going to need close to that many. I think it's actually only 8 items, so one of these might get changed, but I'm going to come through and label them all so that it's way less confusing. Well, of course they're upside down. Well, you get the picture. I'm going to label them so it's easier for me when I have to get all of the belt buses into the right spots. And that way I don't have to chase everything down. But since this is a brand new floor and there's nothing in this hallway yet, I've got lots of flexibility. Alright, so let's get started with some of the fun stuff. These right here are making my heat sinks, so I need rubber and aluminum casing. I don't quite know which one is which, but I am going to use a smart splitter, and then we're just going to bring this up to the correct height. So I think that we'll do the 3rd one there, and we'll go up to the 4th one here. Just delete all the extra ones here at the bottom. This will allow this belt to come through. And with these, let's see, I think one of them is going to be a Mark III, and I think the other one's a Mark IV. I may have to switch these around. But for both of these, this is basically what I'm going to do. Since those aren't completely full belts, we'll just go to right here. And let's get these stacked. Yep, that should be high enough. So I'm going to do any to the right and overflow straight ahead. Copy and paste. So with both of these, I need a Mark II belt going into here. But to make sure that that's a completely full belt, I'm going to use a Mark III right before it. That way, if there's any big gaps coming in, this will grab it more quickly, but then still get limited down to only 120 per minute. And thankfully with 1.0, they made it so it all visually flows at that same speed, and it just looks a lot better than it used to. And it works great for making up those gaps. Alright, so that will siphon off the 120 for each of those. For the copper and the deuterium, those are the only things. So those just go straight from one of here into there. So that'll be nice and easy. Alright, so one of them I know is going to be the motors, which I think I'm going to make this very end one right here. So for the motors, I've got 18 in total, and I need to split those between two different things. I need 8 motors for the turbo motors, and then I need 10 of them to go over here for the cooling devices. So thankfully, I just need my handy dandy 4/9 and 5/9. Let's just go ahead and line it up right here. And then we just need to plug that in there. Oh, and for some reason, this one didn't get labeled, but it looks like, let's see, so this would be 3/9, so that one's 4, and this one gets the 5. Okay. So if this is the 4/9, that means this one is going to go off and plug into the turbo motors. And then this one, I think if we just go up to, we can just wind this one around here. And then it'll end up getting plugged in over there. Alright, so that's the motors, nice and easy. The other main load balancing up here is going to be with the cooling devices. So let me go ahead and set these mergers, and we're just going to offset them. So each one of these are doing 5. It's going to be easiest just to group them all up together, I think. Alright, so here's the 20, and we're just going to send this somewhere over to here and work with this empty area right here. So these cooling systems, I'm going to send 8 to the turbo motors, and then I'm going to send 4 of them right here to the supercomputers, and then the remaining 8, I'm going to send to storage. I really don't need 8 a minute, but it gave me nice, really round numbers, and so that's what we're doing. So the easiest way would be to split off that 4, and that'll leave me with 16, and then I can just split that in half. So if I use my 1/5 and 4/5 blueprint right here, so that'll get plugged in, and then I'll have 16 up here, and then just the 4 down here, so that can plug straight into my supercomputers. So that's the cooling systems. Now it just needs radio control units. For the remaining amount, I'll just throw a splitter right here. So that'll be 16 into here. So I'll send 8 of them over to the turbo motors. And then the other 8 are going to come over to here. And I'm just going to set a merger, just somewhere over here. This will probably get moved. But that way we can take the 8 cooling devices. And then if I get myself a little stubby lift here, get rid of that conveyor pull. And all my supercomputers will join up with those cooling devices, and then we'll merge them up with the final line of products that's over here to the final sushi belt that'll head to storage. Alright, so let me get to work. I'm going to wall this off, and finish all of the connecting belts and whatnot. And then I'll go through whatever other load balancing that I'm forgetting about right now. All right, let's go through it. So I've got my labels on here, and then I just put a portrait sign on the opposite side, just so not just a see-through hole. Although it does just look a little bit funny on the other side, but in here, I like the way it looks. So these are pretty much all of the inputs. So like I said, mentioned, these two just basically go all the way over straight into the constructors. Let's go through all the other madness. So went through this stuff, but then I forgot that I have to split these again. Let's see, so which one's which? Okay, so let's follow the rubber first. Alright, so as you can barely see, there's 238 coming into here. I am immediately splitting off 120, and that is going into the heat sinks. The remaining 118, there we go, is going into this little contraption right here. So I probably don't need to do it here, but I am using the trick where half of it is the faster speed, and then we're limiting it down to Mark 1. So we've got 60 going into here. We split that in half, so 30 and 30. This 30 is getting split all three ways. So right here is 10. The other 20 is all getting grouped up with everything else. So at this point, I've essentially siphoned off 10, right? I'm doing the same thing as before, so priority is going to go to here, but it'll get limited down to Mark 1. So here is 60, and here is 70. So this was the easiest way I could think of to make 70 out of the 118 that I had left. And then the remaining 48 heads on to the back manufacturers making the turbo motors. All right, easy enough. All right, so aluminum casings, the other super hidden one. So we've got 430 aluminum casings, immediately splitting off that 120. So the remaining 310 is headed this way, and we go up and over everything. And then over to here, where I completely forgot to plug this in. So, good thing we're doing this, huh? All right, so Mark 4, and yep, we just face it in this way. All right, so for the rest of the balancing, it was pretty easy. I'm using more of the smart splitter trick because I needed to split this between 150 and 160, which you would think wouldn't be too bad, but yeah, no, that's not an easy split to do without using the smart splitters. Doing 1530 first sounds kind of awful. So this is much easier. Priority is for both center and the right output. And so I'm just using the split belt trick. So we've got 60 right here. And then we're going to get this one limited down to 120. This 60 is getting split in half. So we've got 30 here and the 120. So this is my 150. Which I am now realizing that I sent the 150 to the wrong spot. You know, minor details. So I need to flip that around. So the 160 line needs to come over here to make the radio control units. The 150 line will go to the fused modular frames. Ah, silly me. And then everything else is just basically connecting one thing to the next and sending it to the right spot. I think the only other load balancing was for the radio control units. These went into a couple different spots. So I did the same thing I did with the cooling devices because I'm making 20 and I needed to split off 1/5 of them. And then with the remaining amount, I just needed to split that in half. So 4 of them head over to the turbo motors right here. The other 4 go over to the supercomputers. And the last remaining 2 are the ones going to my storage. So now I need to bring everything over. So some of the things will come from that end, like the ingots. And then a bunch of them are going to come from that end because they're more the finished products, and that's where I'm going to split them off from. I've got my motors in aluminum casing, just need to run those down. Well, this side is starting to get a little bit busy with the load balancing too. So it took me a little while to figure out the plastic and the rubber, so sorry for not walking you through it, but I'll try my best to explain it right now. Alright, so I've got 360 rubber, 360 plastic. Let's go through the rubber real quick. I need 238 out of 360. That's not a great fraction. 119 over 180 just did not sound like something I wanted to try to figure out. So I needed to come up with something different. And this is what I came up with. So I think the easiest way to explain it is 360 minus the 238 is 122. So I thought it was easier just to try to create this instead. So we've got the initial rubber comes down, goes into a splitter. We split it all three ways, so that's going to be 120 on each line. So 120 goes into a splitter. Split that in half, so here's 60, here's 60. So immediately we have 60 in this merger. The other 60 gets split in half again. So here is 90, right? So we have 90, and that goes to this merger. This madness is actually mostly one blueprint. My 7/15 and 8/15. So we have another one of those initial 120 lines goes into a splitter. So we've got half of it, which is 60. The other half of it goes over here. Let's not worry about that. So we have 60 that goes into the 7/15, 8/15. So if we have 60 divided by 15, multiply that by 8, we've got 32. 32 plus 90 is that 122 I was looking for. So this 122 is extra, and it's just going downstairs and over to a sink right over there. The rest of it all gets grouped together, and I've got my 238 that I need to send upstairs for the plastic. And this is to create the 95 that I need. So same thing, splitting it all three ways, so we've got 120 on each of these. So with 120, we split that in half. We've got 60 there, 60 here. Split it in half, 30, 30. Split that in half, 15 and 15. So that's 15 into that merger, and then from over here, I've got the 120 line. This splitter gets split all three ways. So we've got 40, 40, and 40. So on this line, we've got 80 plus the 15. Here's my 95. Here's the 265 I have spare for another project. All right, so I think that is all of the crazy load balancing. So I'm going to finish the buses to actually take those up there. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to get everything just basically to that hallway that's right outside the room. And I'm going to send them all to sinks just right next door to get things started, and have to run around and get 8 different things plugged up just kind of sounds awful. So instead, I'm going to get everything right next to where it's supposed to be, and I'm just going to get it all turned on, and I'll just have some sinks running, and that way I can delete the sinks, send them in. It'll be much easier, and it'll probably make more sense in just a second. So let me get to work, and I'll be right back. And ta-da! I'll take you through a quick tour of it so you can see all the load balancing happening in action before we get it started. But this is basically where everything's going to come in. So I'll just delete this section, and then it's just a straight shot for all of these belts. And then we've just got a row of sinks on this side that I'll just be able to delete once it's started. But let me take you on a quick tour. And here's the craziness of the rubber load balancing in action. I'm not gonna lie, even I'm a little surprised that this works sometimes when I put it together. And the plastic, working like a charm. For the heavy modular frames, what I did was originally this lift only came up to the same height as the rest of these, and that belt just went straight in. So instead I lifted it up so I could get it up over the lift instead of clipping it halfway into it, and then split it so half of my heavy modular frames go upstairs, the other half go into storage. So originally I was making 6 a minute, and that was because I planned on having 3 of them make fused modular frames, because I knew it would take so long to get to this point that I have just so many heavy modular frames. I think like 4 full industrial storage containers, that I've got plenty of those, so we can go down to 3 a minute and I will be just fine. Production. I love all the craziness. So on this side, there really wasn't too much load balancing. I just needed to split off 30 for the Caterium, so that was really easy. So since this belt clearly has quite a few gaps on here, I'm pretty sure this is one where I needed to use a faster speed belt. So this keeps it topped off. So we've got a full Mark 1 belt, and then that just gets split in half. Half of it just merges back onto the line that's getting sunk. You know, just a few extra copper ingots just in case. And then 30 goes upstairs. For the copper, it was super easy because I've just got so much extra everywhere. This one had 90. Oh, I should change this. Now it has 30 free. So it had 90 being plugged into here. So instead, I plugged that 90 into a splitter, split it all three ways, 30, 30, 30. So just recombined two of them. And I've got my 60 line, and now I've just got a random 30 left over there. All right, so I think that is just about everything. We can head on over there, and we can watch this thing come to life. My favorite part. You're gonna have to excuse just a little bit more clipping. I know it's already clipping through this pipe right now, but I want to get the slowest up going first, since it's a Mark 1 belt, and some of these have a ways to go. And then let's do these. Since the aluminum is so much faster, I'm just gonna let these other ones build up just a touch, and then I'll get that one sent in. Alright, now that they have a little bit of a head start, watch the rest of this come to life. Ah, there we go. First turbo motor that I didn't have to manually feed everything for. Feels good. There's our fuse modular frames. Let's go check on everything else. Looks like we got here just in time. Ah, and there's the first supercomputer. Just gonna let this continue to run for a little bit, make sure I didn't miss anything huge. But we're looking good so far. Do love the hover pack. And not having a roof right now is kind of nice. Get to see the whole picture. So it's been running for a bit, and it's looking good. And here we are on the ground floor where we sort everything out. This is where the sushi belt is just going into a string of smart splitters. So the correct item is just getting split off one by one. Nice and easy. Eventually, those containers will completely fill up. The overflow will be sent to sinks, and so I don't have to worry about any of this getting backed up. So a sushi belt is pretty nice for this. Alright, well this has been a successful long episode. That it's 8 cooling systems, 2 radio control units, 2 supercomputers, 3 fuse modular frames, and 2 turbo motors per minute headed to storage. Oh yeah, and 20 casings and 60 aluminum sheets. Can't forget about those. That definitely comes in handy. That is gonna do it for this one. If you made it this far, thank you so much for sticking with it. I appreciate it, and I hope you enjoy these long ones. These are pretty much all the major parts for Phase 4. I'll be able to do the rest of the unlocks. Normally, I like to build pretty much everything in the phase before moving on to the next one, but I'll be honest, I just don't see the point in going full nuclear until I've got all the recycling capabilities. So I'd much rather wait till I have Mark 6 belts and the new things to come in the next phase. So I think I'll be able to finish Phase 4 in the next one, and then we get to move on to the new stuff. Look forward to that, and thanks for watching.